Jack Caterall defeats Ohara Davies on a 12-round unanimous decision with scores of 118-110 and 115-113 twice. Now, before I get to the scoring of this fight and the result, let me just describe what I saw. To call this fight a chess match would be a massive, massive understatement. Both guys were unbelievably cautious from the first round to the 12th round. Both guys were extremely wary of getting clipped by the other guy's power hand. And so what you had is 12 rounds of two guys standing in the middle of the ring, feinting at each other, jockeying for position, and stepping on each other's lead foot. I mean, there was more action watching these two guys stepping on each other's feet than there was throwing punches at each other. And I'm being serious. That's where most of the action was going on, to see who was going to win the battle of footsie, who could step on the other guy's foot and jockey for position. So extremely cautious, both guys, for the whole fight. I saw some people saying Ohara's hand must be damaged because he's not letting the right hand go. I don't know whether it was damaged. Maybe we'll find out in one of his vlogs. But I suspect it wasn't. I suspect that Ohara has just overplayed the scientific boxing approach, because against Josh Taylor, a fight that he lost, he went all out in that fight and he came up short. And after that fight, if you've heard Ohara in his vlogs and in interviews, he's been talking about how it's not about fighting with your heart. It's about you being smart and using your brain. So I think he made a conscious decision to be cerebral in fights and not get drawn in to an actual, proper fight, to not fight with his heart anymore, like he did against Josh Taylor, sorry. So I just think he overplayed it in this fight. The whole trying to box smart and all that type of business. He overplayed it. And he didn't realize that this was a very ambiguous fight. It's a fight that could have gone either way, because there were so many rounds when nothing was happening and nobody was landing anything. How could you possibly think that you're safe going into the 12th round? How could you possibly think, oh yeah, I got this in the bag? Well, what? This fight is up in the air. Anybody could have won it on the cards. Nobody's landed anything. But Ohara's corner were giving him the impression that he was winning the fight and he had it in the bag. And to be fair, Jack Caterall's corner were doing the same. Okay? But for Ohara's corner, I think it was an even worse move to be telling Ohara these things, because Ohara was the puncher in the fight. When you're the puncher and when you're the guy who doesn't look as neat, and when you're also the villain, because Ohara Davies has this image as a villain in British boxing, Jack Caterall doesn't. So when you're the guy who is the puncher, you're expected by everybody, rightly or wrongly, by the judges, etc., subconsciously perhaps, by the crowd watching, you're expected to be the one to make a fight of it. Jack Caterall is the one who normally boxes like that. He's normally a fairly cautious defensive boxer. Whereas Ohara, as the puncher, people look at him like, okay, make something happen. And when you don't make something happen, they're thinking, okay, this fight is going the way the boxer wants it to go. It's a chess match. That's what the boxer wants. The puncher, the guy who's known for the big knockouts, this can't be going the way that he... Now, I know this is splitting hairs at this point, but in a fight like this, where so many of the rounds were devoid of action, that's how you have to score. That's the only thing you have to score it on, is you have to split hairs. I mean, you had so many rounds in this fight where nothing landed, and the only way to split him is, okay, this guy looked a bit neater when he was moving around, he kept his shape a little better. He maybe landed one or two more jabs on the gloves. And that's it. That's all you have to split them. And as I say, that's perhaps what the judges saw. They just saw Jack Caterall as the neater fighter, and Ohara Davies is the puncher who looks a little ungainly at times. I don't know, just maybe losing rounds because just didn't look as neat. How else do you split them in the score department, Nothing happening. I mean, both guys finished the fight without a scratch. Actually, I think Caterall maybe had a little scratch on his face, but for the most part, both guys are fresh as a daisy, and both guys could fight a 12-rounder tomorrow. Seriously, that's how little punishment either man took. Both guys could fight a professional 12-rounder again tomorrow, no problem. Yeah. That's how little action was in this fight. And as far as the scores, before I go to the scores, Jack Caterall landed a few more power shots. My perception of it is that he landed a few more power shots in the fight. I mean, he landed hardly any, but of the power shots that were landed by either man, Caterall landed a few more. But Davies landed more jabs. Davies, with the crazy long reach, was touching Jack Caterall, I don't want to say regularly, but he was touching Jack Caterall more regularly with his jab than Caterall was touching him. But Caterall was landing a few more power shots, left hands to the body particularly, and the occasional left hand to the head. Very occasional. Ohara Davies just wasn't throwing his right hand. Again, some people say that maybe Ohara Davies' right hand was injured, but I just think he probably overplayed it. He overplayed this whole scientific boxing that he's been talking about since his loss to Josh Taylor. Because, he went all out against Taylor. It didn't work. Now he's thinking, okay, that's no good. I got to box scientifically and outthink my opponents. And he overplayed it here. So, anyway, as far as the scoring, 2 judges having it to Jack Caterall by 2 rounds. Perfectly reasonable. The other judge having it 118-110. That's a bit off, or very off. Why did the judge have it like that? Why did not even one judge have it a draw or for Ohara Davies? Again, it could just be because Jack Caterall looks a little neater in the ring. And if there is any politics to it, you have to look at the fact that Ohara is known as a villain, right? He's been known as a villain in British boxing, and Jack Caterall is somebody who's been with Frank Warren longer than Ohara Davies. So if either one was going to get any kind of favoritism from the judges as the quote-unquote home fighter, because neither guy is from Leicester. It's in the Midlands. It was neutral territory. But Caterall appeared to have more support, and as I say, he's been with Frank Warren longer. And I did kind of wonder when Frank Warren signed Ohara Davies. I felt like Ohara Davies is somebody that Frank Warren will not like. I know Ohara has spoken very well of Frank Warren in his vlogs and interviews and stuff like that. And look, Ohara has a contract with Warren, and he's definitely had more one-on-one conversations with Warren than I've had in my life. But I've been watching Frank Warren shows for, God, how long now? Nearly 30 years. Yeah, nearly 30 years I've been watching Frank Warren shows. I've been following Frank Warren's career nearly 30 years. And so over that time period, you get to understand the kind of character that Frank Warren is. The kind of people who you would imagine he will like more than others. And the kind of plan he has for fighters when he signs them. You get a kind of feel for that. So when Ohara Davies was signed by Frank Warren, my perception is that he brought Ohara Davies in as an opponent. He didn't bring him in to be one of his top light welterweights. No, he brought him in as an opponent for people like Terry Flanagan, Jack Caterall, etc. That's my perception of it, because I can't imagine that he looked at Ohara and thought, oh, this is a great guy. This is somebody I want to help. This is somebody I want to give a break to. No. And I don't think Frank Warren even looked at Ohara as somebody who he thought had a lot of potential. I don't think that's Frank Warren's perception of Ohara. No, I think he saw Ohara as a controversial character who he could sell as a villain against some of his up-and-coming junior welterweights, and also Terry Flanagan, who was one of his more experienced junior welterweights, or lightweights, junior welterweights. And so he brought Ohara in as an opponent, to use him as an opponent for those guys. That's my perception. And if that's true, if my perception is accurate, then against any of those guys in a close fight, Ohara was unlikely to get a decision. Yeah, that's my perception. But again, Jack Caterall winning his fight is a perfectly decent result as far as I'm concerned. I don't think any reasonable person can complain. And even if Ohara had got it, I wouldn't have complained. If it was a draw, I wouldn't have complained, because it was that kind of fight. There was nothing in it. But really what I'm trying to say here is, if Ohara feels aggrieved by the decision or surprised by it, he really shouldn't be surprised by it. He really shouldn't be. And Ohara's team, the guy who trains him, I don't know who this guy is. Maybe he's a great trainer, I don't know. But I just feel like under the circumstances, he was telling Ohara the wrong things. He was making Ohara feel like the fight was in the bag and that he was winning. When if you look at the situation, the fact that Ohara is perceived as the villain, Ohara is perceived as the puncher, he's not going to get any favors in that position in a nip and tuck fight. He's not going to. So for his trainer to be telling him, oh, you got this, and blah blah blah, no. You have to understand the situation that you guys are in. You have to understand. You have to be cognizant and aware of the situation you're in. It's not just who you think is landing a couple of extra jabs around. You think it was Ohara, your guy. Oh, that's it. You're winning the fight. No. You've got to think of how the judges might be seeing it. You've got to think of the effect the crowd might have. You've got to think of the politics behind the scenes. You're the new guy to the Warren stable. You ain't been with Warren as long as Caterall has. Caterall's not the one who is known as being controversial. Caterall's not the villain. That's Ohara Davies. You have to take these things into account. Particularly when you're just on the same level as Jack Caterall in terms of the point you're at in your career. It's not like you're a Mayweather, where Mayweather is the cash cow. And so when he goes in there and he's landing one or two more shots than the other guy in a round, he's going to get the rounds. There's not going to be any ambiguity about it. And let's not get it twisted. Ohara Davies is obviously no Mayweather. And this fight wasn't like a Mayweather fight. This fight was genuinely a fight with loads of rounds where you could have given it to either man. You could have just tossed a coin and say, oh, I'll give this one to Caterall, that one to Ohara Davies. It was that kind of fight. So, yeah, a disappointing main event, all in all. Very disappointing. Jack Caterall takes the victory. And the lessons learned here, I think Jack Caterall needs to just keep on doing the same thing. Because he is what he is, Jack Caterall. He's a cautious boxer. He's a counter-puncher. And obviously, when he comes up against fighters who don't have Davis's power, and fighters who are more willing to let their hands go, then Jack Caterall won't look quite so cautious and boring, But he is what he is. He's a counter-puncher. He's a southpaw. He's somewhat slick. He's defensively pretty good. And that's what he's going to keep on doing. Ohara Davies, on the other hand, my advice to him would be, first and foremost, get a proper trainer. No disrespect to the guy that he's with, but he needs somebody more experienced. The guy that he's with might teach him good things from a technical point of view. Okay, he might. But an experienced trainer understands the situation. He doesn't just understand the mechanics of the game, the mechanics of boxing. He understands the situation that you're in, who you are as a fighter, how you're perceived, and also the politics that goes on with the promoter. And again, I don't want to give the impression here that Jack Caterall won because of politics. So don't misquote me, okay? Jack Caterall winning the fight, no issue at all. I'm not saying it's politics. What I'm saying is, in a close fight, politics can make a difference. This is a fight which, in my opinion, you could have given it to anybody. There were so many swing rounds. But the chances of it going in your favor are going to be higher if you're not seen as the villain. They're going to be higher if you're seen as the boxer who normally boxes cautiously and not the puncher who people expect to make a fight of it. Do you understand? These things play a part. So anyway, I'm going to leave it here. I probably talked far too much about this fight because most people were sleeping after about 2 or 3 rounds because nothing was happening. But yeah, Caterall just needs to keep doing what he's doing. And Ohara, I think he needs a more experienced trainer. That's what he needs. So yeah, let me know what you guys feel in the comment section below. It's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.